Hi, I'm Talitha. My stepmother gave my bedroom to her dog. Not metaphorically, literally. She said I was just staying temporarily, then locked the door behind a keypad and moved me into the garage. I lived there for 3 years. They called it independence. I called it insulation from love. Every family photo, every thank you letter, every holiday card. My name was missing, but the deed said otherwise. What would you do if the house they shoved you out of still had your name on it? What if the foundation they stood on was legally yours, and they didn't know? Would you stay quiet, or would you serve the eviction they never saw coming? The air outside smelled like wet leaves and fresh-cut grass, Texas spring in all its sticky glory. I was 17, in my junior year, and already bracing for another long summer in Cyprus, the kind where the heat makes the pavement shimmer and silence settles over the houses like a thick quilt. I walked up the driveway after school, earbuds still in, backpack slung low, and immediately felt something was off. My bedroom window was open, but not in a way that felt right. Inside, I spotted movement, a flash of beige fur. Then another. My stomach knotted. When I stepped inside, Vera's voice carried down the hallway, high and cheerful. I just think the blue matches Bruno's temperament better. He gets agitated with reds, you know. I dropped my backpack at the foot of the stairs and walked toward the sound. As I turned the corner, I stopped cold. There was a dog bed in the middle of my old room. Bruno, her golden retriever, was sniffing it proudly. The walls, once plastered with my photos and hand-drawn sketches, were now empty. In their place hung paw print decals and a framed quote that read, "Dogs leave paw prints on our hearts." I almost laughed. It would have been funny if it weren't my reality. I found Vera fluffing a throw pillow shaped like a bone. "Where's my stuff?" I asked. She turned, startled, then immediately softened her expression like she was on stage. "Oh, honey, we moved your things to the garage. We thought you'd appreciate having your own space. You know, more independence." She gestured vaguely down the hallway. "This room? Bruno needs a peaceful environment. He's very sensitive." I looked to my father, Merrick, who stood behind her, not quite meeting my eyes. His hands were in his pockets, shifting uncomfortably. "We'll talk later," he mumbled. I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded, numb. My legs carried me to the garage on their own. That space, meant for lawnmowers and old bikes, now had an air mattress, a box fan, and a flimsy desk shoved against the wall. My sketchbooks were stacked in a crate beside it, like someone had packed away my identity and labeled it temporary. Later that evening, over microwaved leftovers, I confronted Vera. My words were careful but sharp. "You gave my room to a dog?" She paused mid-chew, dramatically placing her fork down and gasping like I'd slapped her. "Excuse me? After everything we've done for you?" She turned to Merrick, summoning backup. "Do you hear how ungrateful she sounds?" Merrick sighed, not even looking at me. "Vera's just trying her best, Talitha. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stared at them both, heart pounding. I wanted to ask what part of making a teenage girl live in a garage counted as trying her best, but I knew how this would go. I'd be painted as the problem, the dramatic one, the disrespectful daughter. I stood, cleared my plate, and walked back to the garage without another word. That night, I sat cross-legged on the makeshift bed, staring at the ceiling. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows that moved when the fan shifted. I gripped the edge of the thin blanket and thought about how quickly my existence in this house had been erased. This wasn't about the room. It was about what the room symbolized. Belonging, recognition, value. And in that moment, it hit me harder than anything else. In this house, even a Labrador had more agency than I did. I curled into myself, pressing the blanket to my chest. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Not that day. I didn't open the journal that night, but I should have. Instead, I laid it beside me on the garage floor and listened to the muted thump of Bruno's paws overhead, probably celebrating something I wasn't invited to. Again. The next few weeks moved like water through a clogged drain, slow, murky, and impossible to ignore. Spring gave way to early summer, and Cyprus turned into an oven with no off switch. But inside our house, the air was always ice cold, at least emotionally. I went to school, I came home, I stayed out of the way. And Vera? She played her role to perfection, sweet in front of others, dismissive when no one was looking. One Sunday morning, she hosted brunch for some women from her church group. I knew better than to stay inside. Still, I lingered in the hallway longer than I should have. I could hear laughter clinking off porcelain. Mimosas, probably. Always mimosas with them. Then I heard one of the women ask, "And who's this pretty girl?" Vera didn't skip a beat. She answered in that syrupy voice of hers, the one she used when she wanted to appear kind without actually being kind. "Oh, that's Talitha, Merrick's daughter. She's just staying with us until she heads to college." Just staying. It was like someone took a pin and popped whatever dignity I'd patched together. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I turned around and walked out the front door. The sun hit me square in the face, but I didn't feel warm. Later, my dad found me on the back steps. He offered me a glass of water, avoided eye contact, and said something like, "She meant well, you know. It's just a way of phrasing things." I didn't reply. He didn't try again. Days passed, and Vera kept planning things like everything was fine. Her voice filled the halls, talking about colors for patio cushions, seasonal themes, a dog bakery she wanted to try. I started working part-time at a local bookstore after school. It gave me a reason to be away. The less I was there, the less I had to pretend this all made sense. Then came the day of Bruno's birthday. I should have seen the signs. A few days earlier, Vera had picked up a pastel box at the doorstep and muttered something about custom frosting. I chalked it up to another overpriced indulgence. I didn't ask. That Saturday, I got home around 5. As I neared the house, I heard music. Not just background music, speakers on the deck, full volume music. My pace slowed. I turned the corner and saw balloons, streamers, and a giant banner strung between 2 poles. "Happy 5th birthday, Bruno!" People milled around the backyard. Neighbors, friends from church, even kids I didn't recognize. The dog was wearing a paper crown. Someone was live streaming. I wasn't invited, not even told. I stood at the gate for a moment, debating whether to walk in like I belonged. But I'd already learned that lesson. Still, I opened the latch. Vera spotted me instantly. Her smile stiffened. She moved toward me, setting down a tray of cookies shaped like bones. "Oh, sweetheart, it's just a little thing for Bruno and his buddies. You've been so quiet lately. We figured you wanted space." I looked at her. She looked right back, unflinching. "You figured wrong," I said. She chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Come on, Talitha. Don't make this weird." I stepped back without saying another word. Back in the garage, I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the wall. Through the small window above the door, I could see flickers of light, candles maybe, or phone flashes. Every laugh echoed like a slap. They threw a party for a dog. They made space for guests, banners, live video streams, and 10 kinds of treats. But not for me. I reached for the cardboard box I hadn't touched in months, the one labeled "Mom's Old Stuff" in my own handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Beneath a folded scarf and some faded photographs, I found the journal. Leather cover, still sealed at the edges with wear. I held it close, breathing in the faint scent of lavender, my mother's favorite. I didn't read it, not yet. But holding it, I felt something shift, like someone had thrown me a rope, and for the first time, I wanted to climb. By morning, the journal was still under my pillow, its corners poking the back of my neck like a quiet reminder. I wasn't ready, but it wasn't going away. The garage had already begun to feel like a person in my life, more than a place. It breathed with me. It knew when I was holding my breath. Summer in Cyprus didn't ease in politely. It slammed into town like a truck with no brakes. I woke drenched in sweat, sheets clinging to my legs. The box fan, perched on 2 stacked crates, buzzed like it was trying to give up. A spider danced across the concrete floor. I watched it disappear under my dresser. Well, the folding table where I kept my shirts. The garage wasn't just a space. It was a message, a constant echo of what I'd been told without words. You're not part of the plan. That afternoon, I ordered a textbook I needed for summer prep. Vera had forgotten to pass me the email from school. I paid for it myself, using tips from the bookstore. The next day, a delivery truck rolled up. I heard it while refilling my water bottle at the side spigot outside the house, because garage dwellers didn't get kitchen access unless invited. The driver knocked on the garage door like he wasn't sure it was real. I opened it wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt soaked from the heat. My hair was pinned up messily. I hadn't thought twice. He blinked. Sorry, thought this was a storage unit. You live here? I nodded once. He hesitated before handing me the box. Well, stay cool out there. His voice was softer than it needed to be, like he wasn't sure if he should be offering more. When the door closed behind me, I leaned against it, box in hand, and let out a long breath. That look in his eyes, it wasn't pity, it was confirmation. That I wasn't imagining things, that what was happening to me wasn't normal and hadn't been for a long time. Around dinner, I headed inside to wash up. Vera was on the phone, pacing the hallway, wineglass in hand, her laugh too bright. No, seriously, we got Bruno full coverage. It even includes dental. I know, right? I told Merrick, it's better to be safe than sorry. I froze. Bruno, the dog, the one who got the master bathroom for his bath time. He had insurance, dental, a safety net. 2 weeks ago, I'd twisted my ankle hauling a shipment of hardcovers at the bookstore. I asked Vera if we had any wraps or braces. She handed me a bottle of expired aspirin and told me to elevate and meditate. I stood there, silent. My feet still ached. My wrist throbbed from carrying bags that week. But Bruno could chew in peace, knowing a vet would tend to his gums. I didn't say a word. I just walked back to the garage, closed the door, and sat on the cot. The light from the ceiling bulb buzzed overhead. I pulled the journal into my lap, running my fingers over the soft leather. It wasn't that I needed someone to take care of me. I could survive. I was surviving. But the gap between how they treated that dog and how they treated me. It wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. A few days later, Merrick stopped by the garage with a half-hearted attempt at small talk. Need anything? He asked, eyes scanning the floor. I paused. Bruno's got dental insurance. He flinched just slightly. I didn't make that decision. I shrugged. You didn't stop it either. He opened his mouth, then closed it, like he realized anything he said would only prove my point. That night, I placed the journal under my pillow again, still unread. But this time, it wasn't fear holding me back. It was the sense that once I opened it, I couldn't pretend anymore, that whatever I read would demand something of me, and I wasn't sure I had anything left to give. The air had gone from stifling to razor-sharp overnight. Texas rarely gave us winters, but that December it decided to remind us what cold could really feel like. I woke up stiff, wrapped in 2 mismatched blankets and an old hoodie, breath rising like smoke in the dim garage light. The little space heater in the corner blinked twice, hummed and died. I waited. Sometimes it kicked back on. Not this time. I sat up, rubbing my hands together until the friction burned. No heat, no insulation, no backup plan. It was 38 degrees outside, probably less in the garage, with all its cracks and gaps and thin metal skin. My phone said 2:08 a.m. I stared at the time for a while, then made a decision I knew would come with consequences. Quietly, I opened the garage side door and slipped into the backyard. The grass crunched beneath my shoes. The house lights were off, save for the hallway nightlight. I let myself in through the laundry room and tiptoed past the kitchen. The thermostat read 72. Inside felt like heaven. I found an extra throw blanket in the linen closet, then sank into the living room couch, curling up as tight as I could. It was the first time I'd been inside the house overnight in almost a year. Morning came in slow gray light through the blinds. I woke to the sound of cabinets opening, dishes clinking. Vera's slippers padded across the hardwood, then stopped. She stood at the edge of the room, mug in hand, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" I sat up slowly. "The heater in the garage broke. I was freezing." She scoffed, walked to the kitchen counter. "Honestly, Talitha, you're being dramatic. That garage is your space now. You've got your own little setup. You should appreciate that." I bit the inside of my cheek. My fingers were still numb, but I nodded, because arguing would only give her more ground to stand on. I reached for the blanket to fold it, just as Merrick entered from the hallway, still tugging at the sleeve of his sweater. He looked from me to Vera, who wasted no time turning on the waterworks. "She just came in and made herself at home like nothing happened. I don't feel safe with this tension, Merrick. I really don't." I stood up, shaking. Not from cold this time, but from something deeper. I looked straight at my father. "Dad, the heater broke. I couldn't feel my hands. You don't even care." He stared at me for a long moment. I thought maybe he would see me, the real me, his daughter. Not a burden, not a problem to solve with silence. But all he said was, just, "Go back to the garage. We'll fix the heater later." That sentence shattered something I'd been patching together for years. I didn't cry. I just picked up the blanket, walked past them both, and let the back door close behind me. My fingers ached from the cold, but it was my chest that throbbed the most. Back in the garage, I dropped onto the cot, pulled the useless blankets around me, and stared at the journal on the table. I didn't touch it. Not yet. That night, I wore every layer I owned. 2 pairs of socks, a beanie from 6th grade. My winter coat zipped all the way up. I faced the wall and listened to the hum of the neighborhood settling into warmth, into family dinners and bedtime routines. I counted every second until my mind dulled from exhaustion. They didn't have to scream at me. They didn't have to hit me. They just had to keep choosing each other, over and over again. That night, I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped pretending this wasn't exactly what it looked like. That night, I stopped believing I was just imagining things. That night, I knew, if I stayed quiet, I might disappear entirely. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm into the kitchen with a list of demands or accusations. I just opened my laptop, clicked on the email subject line, "Happy Holidays from our beautiful blended family," and stared. The image loaded slowly. Vera always opted for high resolution. She liked to be seen clearly. It was the front porch of our house. Vera stood at the center, arms looped through Merrick's and Zinnia's. Bruno, dressed in a plaid bandana, sat perfectly still on the bottom step. Everyone smiled like it had been the best year of their lives. I was nowhere. No trace of me. Not in the photo. Not in the caption. Not even in the list of blessings Vera gushed about in her newsletter. I didn't scream or throw the laptop. I just closed the screen slowly, carried it back to the garage, and sat down on the cot like it had always been my place. In that moment, the truth settled in my chest like wet cement. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd deleted me. Later that week, while I was raking the side yard, another unpaid chore I never agreed to, Vera leaned out the kitchen window with that sing-song tone she used when she wanted something without sounding like she did. "Sweetie, could you take Bruno out after you're done? And make sure you scoop everything. There's a lot after yesterday." I didn't answer right away. This wasn't the first time. I'd been feeding him, walking him, brushing him when he shed, and picking up after him like I was on staff. I looked up. "Why don't you do it? He's your dog." She blinked. Her expression tightened, just slightly, before snapping back into that forced, offended look she wore so well. "Excuse me?" she said, stepping back from the window with both hands on her hips. "You stay in our garage. We feed you, and now you won't even help?" That word, help, as if I hadn't been helping, as if living in a storage unit next to motor oil and old holiday lights was some kind of gift. I took a breath. "You didn't give me a home," I said. "You assigned me a kennel." She didn't respond. She just pulled the window shut. No shouting, no slamming. That's when I knew the words landed. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was a vacuum. For days, no one spoke to me. Merrick passed me in the hallway and said nothing. Zinnia posted photos from her winter formal, and I could hear Vera gushing about her daughter's smile from 2 rooms away. Meanwhile, I took Bruno out twice a day and started keeping gloves near the door to deal with the dog waste. Not because I gave in, but because I didn't want Vera using it as another reason to blame me for something. Then, that night, I printed the holiday photo from the email. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed to look it in the face. I taped it to the inside of my garage cabinet and stared at it for a long time. No Talitha, no trace, just a perfect little lie of a family. The next morning, I opened the journal. It had sat on my nightstand for weeks, waiting. The cover had softened at the edges from my hands, touching it, but never opening it. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I cracked it open and saw her handwriting, my mother's. She had signed the inside cover like she was still alive. "To my baby girl, if you're reading this, trust yourself." The first page was dated 4 months before she passed. As I turned the pages, her voice came through, strong, sometimes messy, but always deliberate. I felt her again, not in a photo, not in a memory someone else controlled, but right here, on paper, telling her side. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. The handwriting in the journal was jagged and slanted, the ink smudged in places, but the voice was unmistakably hers, my mother's. Some entries were mundane, grocery lists, thoughts about work, but others pierced straight through me. "If they ever try to erase you, Talitha, remember, your presence was never negotiable." I read until the sun pushed through the slats in the garage window. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Each word seemed to undo something that had been tightening in me for months. She knew. Even back then, she saw what might come. Later that weekend, I remembered an old book of hers I used to keep in my room, a small hardcover with pressed flowers between the pages. Something told me it might still be there. Vera wasn't home, and Merrick had gone out for errands. I took my chance. I stepped through the laundry room, past the kitchen, and walked down the hall toward my old bedroom. For a brief second, I imagined opening the door, smelling lavender, hearing my mother's voice humming as she folded laundry. But when I grabbed the handle and pushed, it didn't budge. A quiet beep followed. They'd installed a keypad. I stared at it, stunned. Numbers glowed blue. I pressed my palm flat against the door and leaned in. It smelled like disinfectant and something else. Kibble? I could hear the faint jingle of Bruno's collar from the other side. Vera appeared at the end of the hallway, sipping from her ever-present glass of lemon water. "Oh, that?" she said casually, nodding toward the door. "We had to add it for Bruno. He gets anxious when the door's open too often." I didn't respond. She smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world and turned away, humming softly. I stood there for another full minute before I backed away. My hand was still slightly shaking. They hadn't just changed the room. They locked my memories behind a code I would never be told. Back in the garage, the silence thudded. I sat on the edge of the cot, the journal still on the pillow, and stared at the blank wall like it might crack open and offer answers. The betrayal no longer hurt like a fresh wound. It had gone cold, dulled, but not gone. That evening, while walking through the kitchen to grab a glass of water, something on the fridge caught my eye. A letter, printed on Vera's cream-colored stationery, pinned dead center with a floral magnet. I recognized her phrasing immediately. "Thank you to my loving family, Merrick, Zinnia, and our sweet Bruno, for making this house so full of light." That was it. No mention of me. Not even a vague, "and all who share this home." My jaw tightened. I pulled the letter down, folded it with slow precision, and walked back out without a word. In the garage, I lit a tea light candle in the corner. I placed the letter into an old metal bowl and watched it curl into ash. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like a funeral. Later that night, I picked up the journal and turned to a blank page. With the same pen my mom had used, one I'd found tucked in the spine, I wrote my name. Not just scribbled it, but carved it out on the paper with purpose. Talitha Rivera. I underlined it twice. They erased me from the fridge, from the walls, from their public smiles. But they couldn't remove this. The next morning, I opened my laptop and typed in the county property search portal. The journal had mentioned something about the house, about papers she once signed with Merrick. Don't forget the house was ours, baby. Don't ever forget that. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, breath tight. Let's see who actually owns what. It was nearly midnight by the time I found the file online. I'd typed our address into the county records site out of pure instinct, half expecting a paywall or outdated document, but what loaded stopped my breath cold. There it was. Owner Merrick Rivera. Co-owner Talitha Rivera. My name. Right there in black and white. Not a memory. Not an old report card. Not a photo quietly tossed from the fridge. This was legal, official, binding. My mother had made sure of it. I sat back in the chair, letting the weight of that simple fact settle over me like a warm blanket. I wasn't just someone squatting in their garage. I was a legal part of the foundation they were standing on. Rain started tapping on the roof of the garage. Cypress was finally getting one of those soft southern storms that didn't rage but whispered warnings instead. I pulled the journal back into my lap and lit the little candle I'd been using for weeks, more out of comfort than necessity. My eyes traced every word of the next few entries. If you're reading this, she'd written, it means I didn't get to explain things in person. I'm sorry. But don't ever let them make you feel like a visitor in a house you were born into. The next page was a drawing, a hand-sketched map of the attic. She'd marked a corner with a little X. Boxes here, fireproof, keep it safe. I didn't wait for sunrise. I slipped into the house quietly, barefoot on the creaking floorboards. The attic door above the hallway closet groaned as I pulled it open. I climbed the stairs with a flashlight, heart thudding louder than the thunder outside. The attic smelled of dust and pine. Old Christmas decorations lay covered in plastic bins, but I wasn't here for them. I found the box tucked behind a beam, under a faded blanket. Fireproof, just like she said. Inside were birth certificates, old insurance policies, and, folded carefully in a sealed envelope, the original deed to the house. My name was printed in bold. Talitha Rivera. My hands shook, but not from fear. From clarity. From the kind of rage that burns quiet and clean, like a stovetop coil right before it glows. They had erased me from walls, from photos, from letters. But not from this. I stayed in the attic longer than I had to. Maybe part of me needed to sit in a space that hadn't been redesigned around Vera's rules. I ran my fingers across the edges of old furniture and boxes we used to keep when Mom was still here. It smelled like lemon oil and thyme. Back in the garage, I scanned the deed into my laptop, double-checked the image, and sent it to the email address of a legal contact Odette, the neighbor, had once quietly given me. Just in case, she'd said, slipping the card into my hand one afternoon when she saw me take the trash out in the rain barefoot. Attached, I wrote, Hi, I'm reaching out regarding co-ownership and occupancy rights. Attached is a copy of a deed listing me as co-owner. Please advise on legal standing regarding eviction options. I read it once, then hit send. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was restoration. When I closed the laptop, I sat in the dim light, journal beside me. I whispered, Mom, I hear you. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the wind was still moving branches, like it wanted someone to notice. I noticed. I walked to the garage window, looked up toward the house, and saw the living room lights still on. Inside, Vera was folding something. Merrick sat in his recliner, distracted. The two of them looked comfortable, settled. They had no idea what was coming. Not a tantrum. Not a scream fest. But truth. Real, documented, notarized truth. I turned off the light, pulled the blanket over my legs, and said aloud to no one in particular, "Let's finish what you started." The sun hadn't risen fully when I got dressed. I wore a black turtleneck, pressed jeans, and pulled my hair back into a tight bun. Not out of vanity, but precision. Every fold of paper I slipped into the folder felt like armor. The scanned deed, my mother's map, the printed notice to vacate. I clicked the metal clasp shut and exhaled through my nose. 3 years of swallowing silence. That morning, I wasn't asking anymore. I found Merrick in the kitchen, stirring powdered creamer into his coffee. He looked up, startled, when I sat down across from him at the table. "I need you both here," I said. "Now." Vera walked in a few minutes later in her floral robe, carrying her phone like it was an extension of her hand. She glanced at me, unimpressed. "Is this a family meeting or a pity party?" I placed the deed on the table. "This house is co-owned by me. You moved me to a garage I partly own." Her smirk vanished. Merrick leaned forward, brows furrowed, reading the document. "Where did you get this?" "From the attic. Mom left it for me. My name was added when you refinanced 12 years ago. You signed it." Vera looked at Merrick, but he didn't say a word. "That's outdated," she said, voice cracking slightly. "No," I said, voice steady. "It's just been ignored." Silence ballooned between us. "This isn't about being dramatic," I added. "It's about being legal. You treated me like a stray dog. You gave Bruno my room, locked the door, erased me from the fridge, the family photo, your conversations, everything. But you couldn't erase this." Vera scoffed, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee. I reached into the folder again and slid an envelope across the table toward her. "You have 30 days. She didn't touch it at first. "What's this?" she asked, though her tone said she already knew. "An official notice to vacate. It's been filed. This isn't a joke. I've consulted a lawyer. The paperwork's real." Vera's face blanched. She tore open the envelope with jerky fingers and scanned the page. "You can't do this." I tilted my head. "I already did." She turned to Merrick, eyes wide, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he didn't. He didn't even look at her. She stood, knocking her chair back. "This is my home. I built this family." "You built a cage," I replied, "and you forgot I still had the keys." Vera stormed out of the room, but not before muttering, "You'll regret this." "I already regretted not doing it sooner," I said. Merrick stayed seated, staring at his mug like it might offer a solution. I stood and walked out, folder under my arm, not waiting for anyone's permission. Back in the garage, I pulled a box from under the cot and began packing. Not frantically, intentionally. Books, clothes, small sketches I'd hidden over the years. I'd stay for now, but I would never belong to that space again. In the days that followed, Vera mounted a passive-aggressive crusade. She played worship music louder than usual. She made phone calls just loud enough for me to hear. I tried everything. I took her in. "This is how she thanks me?" She began labeling food in the fridge as "for Bruno only." But none of it mattered. Because the silence in Merrick's eyes said it all. He had nothing left to argue with. Each morning, I crossed off a date on the calendar pinned to the garage wall. Each night, I reread parts of the journal, finding strength in her voice, her warnings, her love. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like even ground. For the first time, I didn't tiptoe when I walked into the kitchen. I didn't flinch when Vera's phone stopped mid-sentence as I passed. I was done waiting for kindness. I had chosen accountability. The power wasn't in yelling. It was in documentation, signatures, scanned PDFs, and stamped envelopes. Sometimes power doesn't roar. Sometimes it walks in quietly with receipts. The house finally felt level. But I wasn't finished healing. 30 days passed. Vera left exactly at 8 a.m. on a Thursday, Zinnia trailing behind her with a single rolling suitcase and Bruno in tow, his tail thumping against the back seat of her SUV. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even glance toward the garage. And I didn't need her to. The house was silent after they drove off. Not peaceful, just hollow. Even the floors seemed to breathe slower. I stood in the entryway for a long minute, listening to the nothing. That night, Merrick tried to make scrambled eggs. The smell of burnt butter filled the kitchen. I watched from the opposite side of the counter, arms crossed, no appetite. He scraped the eggs into a bowl and slid it across the counter like it was a peace offering. "I guess it's just us now," he said. I didn't answer. There wasn't much left to say. A few days later, he caught me in the hallway. "I thought I was keeping the peace," he said quietly. "I didn't realize I was creating war." I looked at him, really looked at him. Older than I remembered, smaller somehow. "You didn't just choose her," I said. "You unchose me." He sat down slowly at the kitchen table and buried his face in his hands. I stood still, unmoved, like if I breathed too hard, it would undo all the ground I'd reclaimed. He cried. I didn't need to. I'd already lived through the grieving part. I never gave him a formal answer to his apology, but I didn't file charges either. Didn't demand compensation for back utilities or emotional distress. I could have. I had the right. Instead, I left my key on the counter 5 days later. No goodbye. Just a folded note that said, "You know where to find me, if you ever figure out how to show up." I moved into a small apartment near campus. It wasn't much. Second floor, thin walls, a heater that clicked before it worked. But it was mine. I hung my mother's journal on the wall in a shadow box, right above the desk, where I kept a framed copy of the deed. Not to gloat, just as a reminder. The first thing I bought for the apartment was a space heater. One that worked. One that hummed reliably, like a song that never left you alone in the dark. I painted the bedroom a soft green. I filled the kitchen with grocery items I liked. Real cereal, not the generic boxes Vera used to buy for everyone but herself. I lit a candle most nights and played the music Mom used to listen to while folding laundry. Vera started some online group shortly after moving out. A blog or a support circle. I didn't follow it, but friends of friends said she called it the Ungrateful Generation. Said her first post was titled, "How I Opened My Home and Got Evicted for It." I never commented, never corrected her. Truth doesn't need defending. It just waits. Some evenings, I still thought about the garage. Not with longing, but as a place I survived. The way someone remembers the woods they were once lost in. You don't need to revisit them. You just need to know how you got out. I kept the journal open to one particular page. If they ever try to rewrite the story, write your own ending. That page stayed visible on my desk, even when finals hit, even when life got noisy again. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And in that small second-floor apartment, surrounded by my own choices, I finally had it. I didn't want to win. I just didn't want to disappear. And I didn't. I'm still here, still standing, still mine. Sometimes the quietest acts are the most powerful. Talitha didn't need to scream to be heard. She needed to know her worth and act on it. This story isn't just about a room or even a house. It's about reclaiming space, emotional, legal, and personal, when no one else will fight for you. Have you ever been made to feel like a guest in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters.